Good morning. Welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Summit, New Jersey, a community committed to being radically inclusive while feeding the human spirit and healing the world by being an anti-racist, anti-oppressive space, centering and listening to the voices of the marginalized, especially when what they have to say is not easy to hear. My name is Jermaine Kripe, and I'm a member of your Lifespan Ministry team. And joining us today is Shivers. To our human family gathered here, it's a gift to see your smiling faces. Thank you for being present. And to our animal friends, those with us today and those here in spirit, we welcome you to this sacred space for this time of worship that's dedicated to you. Your presence in the lives of your human family brings comfort, companionship, laughter, and a few challenges. Regardless of the number of legs you have, or if you're furry, fluffy, scaly, slimy, or winged, we welcome you and thank you for your gifts. The writer Ian Riddell shares in his poem, The Calling of the Creatures, "Come hoof and trunk and tail and horn and paw and wing and claw. Come bird and reptile, mammal born, all full of nature's law. Bring bark and crow and ribbit too, and silent stare and hiss. Bring purr and trill and warble too, a voice no ear can miss. We gather here, each and life and all, to celebrate and sing, to honor creatures large and small, their holiness to bring. Welcome to this circle of belonging, to this holy, nurturing space. Welcome home.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Open your ears to the song. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. From the winged to the worms, from the microscopic, even subatomic, to the sequoia and the African savanna elephant, from the rough, hot skin of the bearded dragon and the smooth, cool slip of the stingray, we pause to notice, to appreciate, to see the connections across this web illuminated and honored. We bow to the holy, already here, always here, still here, now.
Good morning, Beacon. Today's story comes from longtime members Bill Edwards and Margaret Bennett. Our cats, all rescues, they come to us with a purpose. to minister, the cats clearly defining for us our roles. We must get them ready for their work. We lovingly prepare them for their visit by clipping their claws and grooming them, dressing them in their harness and leash, providing them with their pet partner ID badge. I'm placing them lovingly with a blanket into their carrier and driving them to the facility. Today, we share stories from two of our amazing rescue cats. Both cats, Madison and Nina, were inducted into the Veterinary Hall of Fame for therapy cats. Madison was abandoned when his first family moved from the apartment building. After hearing his cries, the superintendent called the Jersey Animal Coalition, and the executive director knew he was the perfect cat for us. Already taking in many unadoptable cats, she stated, "Only you can have this cat. He is a hugger." And we knew right then we had our first pet partner. After working hard to get qualified as a pet partner, Madison was ready for his first assignment. As we entered the building, the ice maker rumbled. But Madison remained unfazed. Whew, I thought. He passed the reaction to distraction test perfectly. And as we walked down the corridor, many residents gathered around. Some were very loud and boisterous, others uninterested, and some reached in and gave Madison several pets. Madison remained calm and continued to just purr on and on. Great, I thought. Madison passed the angry yelling and clumsy petting part with flying colors. Many residents were confined to their beds. One woman inviting Madison in for a visit. She gently outstretched her hand, and Madison rubbed his head against it. And she perched her lips together and invited him closer. And he walked closer to her, laid his chin on her shoulder, and gently reached out his paw and touched her face. The woman softly spoke to Madison about how lonely it could be in there. Madison, still resting his head, listened carefully. I stood there in silent awe, witnessing this sacred space and this amazing cat bringing such peace and love to this woman. For many years more, Madison brought comfort and joy to this woman and to us. And then there was Nina, born with an upper respiratory illness that led to her eventual blindness. She was still a remarkably happy cat. One time in a hospital elevator, someone asked, "Is that a therapy cat?" Our grandfather is in hospice, and he loves cats. Can she visit him? Absolutely. And off we went. The patient was sleeping, and his grandson whispered in his ear, "You have a special visitor." And he opened his eyes, and upon seeing Nina, his eyes lit up. Nina placed her paws on his chest and nuzzled his face. To this he proudly exclaimed, "Tell Grandma I have a new love." Our universalist principles teach us to respect the web of life. And sometimes when we think of this principle, we think of what we can do for the earth or for the animals. But sometimes we forget what they can do for us. Companion animals offer unconditional love. They love us for who we are. When we are stressed or lonely, they can offer us comfort. There are over 6 million animals in shelters today that ask nothing more than some food and shelter, and of course, love.
Let us move from story into a time of centering prayer. I invite you to get comfortable in your seat, maybe placing your feet on the floor and allowing the chair to hold you. You can close your eyes or find a place to focus your vision, even, and maybe especially given the fact that it is Animal Blessing, find a window to look out of. Or maybe use some of the images that we've provided as a way to focus. Take a centering breath and let us join together in a prayer written by Thomas Rhodes for Animal Blessing. You birds of the air, hawk, sparrow, and laughing jay, you embody freedom itself. Delight us with your song, astound us with feats of migration, grant us your perspective. For too often, our horizon is limited, and we are blind to the full results of our actions. You worms of the earth, ants, beetles, spiders, centipedes, you are the essential but often forgotten strand in nature's web. Through you, the cycle is complete. Through you, new life arises from old. Remind us of our humility, for the wheel of life does not turn around us. We are not the axle, but merely spokes, no less than unseen, unknown, and shunned companions such as yourselves. You creatures of the field and wood, marsh and desert, bear and bison, skunk and squirrel, weasel and wolf. Too often we have sacrificed your homes in the name of progress, clear-cutting the forest to fill our desire, or covering the earth with tarmac and cement and suburban lawns. Pray that we may remember that the earth was not given for our needs alone, and what we do to you, we eventually do to ourselves. You animals of the farm, horse and cow, pig and fowl, willingly or not, you give your lives to feed humanity. Not all of us, but many of us. Your milk for our nourishment, your flesh for our sustenance. Yet too often we forget that the meat on our tables was once as alive as we are. Forgive our willful ignorance and remind us constantly to give thanks for your sacrifice. You, dearest companions in our lives, dogs and cats, hamsters and goldfish, rabbits, and yes, even rats. You who are with us today, and you who always will be present in our memories. You have enriched our lives in so many ways, endured our shortcomings with calm acceptance, taught us something of our humanity, taught us how to love. May we hold you in our hearts throughout the days of our lives. Breathing deeply, we hold these words in our hearts. Breathing deeply, we give thanks. Breathing deeply, we say, Amen.
Each Sunday, we hold together the fullness of life through our weekly candle lighting so that we may hold each person's sorrow or joy as a community. If you are struggling today, I invite you to put your hand on your heart. If you'd like us to light a candle, either for a personal struggle or a struggle in our larger world, we invite you to lift it up in the chat. Today, we light a candle for Haitian and Afghan migrants seeking asylum, safety, or shelter for themselves and their families. May we see ourselves in them. Who among us is not one revolution, earthquake, or hurricane away from fleeing rocket-launched missiles or living under a bridge thousands of miles from home? We also lift up women and girls who are victims of abuse, whether it's in a toxic relationship or the suffocating indignities of a repressive, misogynistic regime, or a world-class athlete living with the emotional wounds inflicted by a teen doctor. May our candle reflect the light of inherent dignity we cherish in our wives, in our daughters, our sisters, mothers, friends, neighbors, and colleagues. With each candle lit, may each one of us know we are held in the care and love of our community. Joy, beauty, and blessing are all around us, beloved. If you or someone you love has celebrated a birthday, an anniversary, or started a new job this week, say their name out loud wherever you are, or write their name in the chat. We celebrate you. The author Scott Peck defines love as the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. I invite you to call to mind someone in your life who has nurtured your spiritual growth. I invite you to clap your hands for that person or those people, or those family pets, whether they have fins or fur. Teddy. And write their names in the chat. I'm going to write Teddy in the chat. Today, we celebrate the gifts of nurturing we give to and receive from each other. In other words, we celebrate love. For these gifts and so much more, we give thanks.
My name is Suzanne Wagner, and this weekend I'm away at Frost Valley with the senior youth group on their annual fall retreat. While growing up at Beacon in the late 80s, we did not have a youth group program. I spent my junior and early senior high school years going to youth group at my friends' churches. While I loved the community aspect of their youth groups, I did not enjoy the doctrinarian aspects. I simply did not have the same beliefs as they did, and grew tired over the years of pretending to believe in something that I did not. One day, while waiting for my mother to finish up with whatever she was doing, I asked Reverend Bumbaugh why we don't have a youth group, and proceeded to tell him about my experiences at the other youth groups I had been attending. His response was, if you want a youth group, then we should have a youth group. I then began working with his son in the religious education coordinator planning a youth group, and senior youth group was born. Fast forward several years. When my daughter was 6, she started asking those hard questions, which I tried to explain the best I could. I wanted her to have a religious home, somewhere where she would feel safe to explore her values and beliefs, allowing her to come into her own as a person. When she was in 5th grade, I finally decided to return to Beacon. I walked into the building the first time and knew that I made the right choice, seeing how comfortable she was immediately. Over the past 5 years, I have watched her struggle and grow in a community where she has always been embraced by love. When struggling, I saw her being supported by the community while being guided in making the tough decisions she needed. Now, as a member of Senior Youth Group, I have the joy of watching her come into her own, developing into a young woman. She is learning to stand for what she believes in and how to act on it in her life, which is not an easy thing to do in today's society. I know that Youth Group at Beacon has laid the foundations for me that I have carried through my life as an adult, and I am continuing to see this with my daughter. The truth is, we create this community called Beacon together, you and me, us. Our mission comes alive through our relationships, our voices, our leaderships, and our gifts. Now we move into a time where we give generously to support making that mission come alive in our lives and in the world. In a minute, you'll see ways to contribute to Beacon. We invite you to lean into this practice of generosity. I know firsthand it makes a difference. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Craig Babcock, and my wife, Margaret, and I have been members at Beacon for over 15 years. Frankly, she dragged me here back then, supposedly to hear the music, and I stayed to hear and play music and to be intellectually stimulated and garner friendship. I have thought of myself since I was a teenager as an atheist. However, recently, I finally decided that I am not an atheist. I am a free thinker. And here is a poem that I have written called Free Thinker, Inner Peace. Free thinker, inner peace, present in the moment, happy to be stardust, inhaling, exhaling this planet's wind, a water being, accepting complexity, impermanence, open to interdependence, relationship with all, expanding understanding, both out and in, sensing my heartbeat, feeling my lungs working, marveling at my mostly automatic body, home to life and constant change. Feeling, smelling, hearing, seeing, tasting. In essence, so like my fellow humans, unburdened by belief, dogma, or right ways, able to laugh at unruly mind, seek stillness. I am a community of atoms present in this moment.
Our second reading is Goldfinches by Mary Oliver. Goldfinches. In the fields we let them have. In the fields we don't want yet, where thistles rise out of the marshlands of spring, and spring open each bud a settlement of riches. A coin of reddish fire. The finches wait for midsummer, for the long days, for the brass heat, for the seeds to begin to form in the hardening thistles, dazzling as the teeth of mice, but black, filling the face of every flower. Then they drop from the sky, a buttery gold. They swing on the thistles, they gather the silvery down, they carry it in their finchy beaks to the edges of the fields, to the trees. As though their minds were on fire with the flower of one perfect idea. And there they build their nest and lay their pale blue eggs. Every year, and every year, the hatchlings wake in the swaying branches, in the silver baskets, and love the world. Is it necessary to say any more? Have you heard them singing in the wind above the final fields? Have you ever been so happy in your life?
Early Tuesday morning, a fire broke out in the homes of two Unitarian Universalists who are members of the congregation that I served in Charlotte, North Carolina. While Judy and Michael both got out, Judy died later from smoke inhalation. Judy was an extraordinarily compassionate human being. An oncology nurse, she had this instinctive way of reading people and also of not being falsely friendly, but incredibly connected. She had a gift for paying attention. I tried to learn from her how to be present for people in some of the most challenging times of their lives. She always made a statement when she came into the room. She was very tall and always dressed in style. The first time she sang in the choir, I remember her coming in a polka dot dress with matching shoes. When I officiated her wedding to Michael, she surprised us all by singing a solo to him that was just breathtaking. Judy was a person who took care to notice the world around her, to appreciate it. She would kind of scan a room, and you could watch her studying people. She noticed the details, how your voice sounded different, or how there was a new twinkle in your eye. She raised 4 children and was an extraordinary animal lover. She was president of a local animal rescue group, and often her home had a litter of puppies or kittens that were still bottle feeding, getting ready to be adopted. And that's how she died, I'm told, going back into their home to save the animals. I thought many times, as many of us do in the wake of a tragedy, for an alternative path where Judy survives the fire. But of course, that is simply who she was, a person connected beyond any empirical measure to other people, to animals, and to the earth. A person who noticed, appreciated, and who lived her life out of this love for the world. Connecting in that way to life seems frightening to me. as if sorrow would overtake me or the enormity of suffering would just defeat me. Now, I know that's not rationally true, and that few of us will ever be presented with an extraordinary circumstance like Judy and Michael were, or have to face a tragedy like theirs. But I must say, the more people I know and the more of the world I love and appreciate, the truth is, the more my heart might break and mourn. I've been turning over the words of the conservationist Terry Tempest Williams this week, who writes, "If I choose not to become attached to nouns, a person, place, or thing, then when I refuse an intimate's love or hoard my spirit, when a known landscape is bought, sold, and developed, chained or grazed to a stubble, or a hawk is shot and hung by its feet on a barbed wire fence, my heart cannot be broken because I never risked giving it away. A person whose mind reigns in the heart when the body sings desperately for connection can only expect more isolation and ecological disease. Our lack of intimacy with each other is in direct proportion to our lack of intimacy with the world. We have taken our love inside and abandoned the wild." She reminds us, grief dares us to love once more. We Unitarian Universalists have been called many things at different times: tree huggers, hippies, and free thinkers, perhaps among the more flattering of terms. And in this community of atoms, to quote Craig Babcock, and individuals who also become communities of communities, circles of connection, there is grief and greater loss in being more connected, for sure. But when we rein in the heart as the body sings for connection, most especially as it has in this last year plus of disconnection, there is equal grief and loss in numbing, closing off, or shutting down. We sing for connection, yearn for it, and the world heals by the reweaving of these connections, by cultivating relationship, the consciousness and courage to notice, to pay attention, and then to act not from a theoretical sense of rightness, but rather a proximate, connected place, a deeper source of compassion, appreciation, and love. Katrin Einhorn captured in an article in the New York Times this past week the species now officially extinct in the United States: 11 birds, 8 mussels, 2 fish, a bat, and a plant. She writes that in 1973, when the Endangered Species Act was passed, the U.S. government began tracking species and working to rehab endangered ones, to protect them, and hopefully to bring them back. Since that time, over 54 species have been removed entirely from the endangered or threatened list and now are thriving, and 48 more have improved from endangered to threatened. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is largely tasked with paying attention, with noticing. And that noticing has saved at least 54 species. Amy Trahan, a biologist who works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, describes the heartbreak of searching for an ivory-billed woodpecker in the bayous of Arkansas. While her colleagues had a brief sighting in 2005, this year, after an exhaustive search, Amy had to finally conclude and officially list the woodpecker as extinct. She recalls checking that box with tears flowing. There is a cost, beloved, in not noticing, and a profound shift in proximity. Because it matters not only what we do, but why we do it. Where do the actions arise from to save the world if we've not savored it and understood with humility our place in it? In that noticing, we are invited into a tender humility that moves us from the center of the story to perhaps a more apt place in the greater web. One from which we can see clearly, gently, a greater love leading us on. Not an affection, but a commitment. I looked at our 12-year-old dog last night. It was a little past 4, and she'd woken me up to take her outside because she gets confused these days where the dog door is and how to get back in. She, at the moment, though, was at the foot of the bed, snoring very loudly while I could not fall back asleep, worried for the world and the to-do list that I form late into the night. I studied her heavy breathing, the rise and fall of the barrel of her chest, and that strange, somehow peaceful and yet resounding snore that rose with each movement. I considered that at her age and being a large dog, she might not have that much longer with us. And then I felt that sense of how mysterious it is to love a creature who is so fully present in your life and your family, and to know that one day they may not be there. How the strangest threads endure and how time moves along, whether I notice it or not. I suddenly felt a deep appreciation here at 4 a.m., unable to sleep, for the dog who woke me and the rest of the house now sleeping, and the world that is right now. As the poet Mary Oliver says of the goldfinches, every year hatchlings wake in the swaying branches, in the silver baskets, and love the world. It's not an abstraction to pay attention, to notice the dog's chest rise and fall as she snores deeply on an autumn night, to listen for the bird song returning as the plains once took their grounding, to listen, to wind in the trees that are making room for life through and beneath their canopy. To listen to what is no longer. To notice the stir of the community of atoms in our own being. To mourn those who are not here. To weep when they are gone. And to let yourself feel the enormity of this connection in which we live and die. And to remember that grief is the heart's daring to love again. May we be called in this week from the save to the saver, back to the save, from the pain to proximity, from despair to faith in action. Take time, beloved, to love the world.
I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine.
For our benediction this morning, I'd like to introduce you to one of the tiny special creatures that bring joy into our home. This is Maud. Maud, Beacon Maud. She is one of 2 domesticated rats that call our house home. She and her cage mate Maggie are 2 of the 4-legged creatures that we love and care for each day, and in return, they give us so much joy. We also have a fish tank, but I've lost count of how many are in there because that Alice keeps adding more to it each week. Thank you all for being a part of our Animal Blessing service, where we recognize our mutual interdependence with all creatures and the gifts of love, care, and compassion that our furried, feathered, and scaled friends bring us. Their presence enriches our lives and reminds us that we're connected to everything on this planet. And as such, each of us should care for all creatures as if we were caring for ourselves. So, beloved, go into your week holding in your hearts the belief that every creature, every human, every rock, plant, and river is important. Let the love we give to and receive in the bounty from everything in our planet draw us more deeply into the larger circle of life, into the wonder of our common humanity, and inspire us in an emboldened sense of stewardship for our environment, this big, beautiful planet that we call home. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.